Hello everyone and welcome back to another video and happy Tuesday. Today I am continuing my celestial theme soaps and we are making one of my favourite events, an eclipse soap. This is a soap that I've been thinking for a couple of years about how I can actually make the eclipse effect and the halo around the moon. I think I've come up with a way that will work, so let's see how it turns out. I'm starting this soap out as ever by mixing my lye water solution into my oils, and they're both at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to stir those with my spatula to bring them to emulsification. I want to split off a small part of this soap to create the halo, so I'm going to leave the main part of my batter at a nice very thin trace, just about emulsified, so that I can work with it later. I'm pouring off about 2 cups worth of soap here, and that's what I'm going to use to help create the halo around the moon. And I'm going to colour that with kaolin clay, and I'm using quite a bit. I want it to be nice and white, so I'm going to use about 2 teaspoons to colour this part of the soap. I'm going to add some activated charcoal into the rest of my soap, and that's going to form the night sky that the moon is going to sit in. So I'm going to add that right into my main part of my soap batter, and then I'm going to mix that in with my spatula just to make sure I have enough in there. I don't want to make this come to trace any quicker, so I'm not going to use my stick blender on this part just yet. Once I'm happy with the colour of the black part of the soap, I am going to move on to the white part, and I'm going to bring that to emulsification into a thick trace using my stick blender. I previously made the silhouette of the moon that's going to go right in the middle of this soap, and I made that by pouring some black soap into some column embeds, and then I put those in the freezer for a few hours. Having those frozen means that any soap that touches it is going to solidify a lot more quickly. So I have my 2 columns, and I'm just going to pour the white soap right over the top to coat the embed. Now, this isn't going to be a completely even thickness or coating all the way around or all the way along this soap, which will add to the realistic halo effect that I'm looking for the eclipse. I'm just using my spatula on this one to get that soap all the way around the moon and fully covered. I'm going to set those off to one side so that I can create the gradient effect of the halo. I'm propping those up in this mixing jug here. I'm using some of my main soap batter, which you can see is still nice and thin, and I'm adding a 1/4 cup into that white soap. Then I'm going to mix that in with my spatula until it's fully incorporated. That's going to make it a nice light grey colour. Once I've got it fully incorporated, I'm just going to use my spatula again and pour that soap right on top of the moon embed. And you can see that the grey and the white are not very different in colour at all, which is going to give a nice gradual gradient effect to the halo around the moon. I'm just making sure that I get all the little cracks in the soap fully covered with the grey layer. And as this sets in the jug, it is going to solidify and it is going to pool a little bit around the bottom. I'm adding 1 more 1/4 cup of black soap into my now grey soap, and I'm dispersing that once again with my spatula until it's fully incorporated and a slightly darker grey colour. Once I've got the colour nice and even, I've brought back my embed, and this time I've decided to just pour the soap right onto the moon embed and make sure that I get it covered all the way down the sides. You can see that the soap coating the moon is a little bit thick and a little bit chunky, so it's going to be an uneven halo around the moon. We're going to repeat this process again, adding one more quarter cup of black soap into my white soap, mixing it in with a spatula, and then pouring that onto the moon embed. And you can see how the soap in my small jug is getting darker and darker as we go. And it's also getting thinner and thinner, which means that I can pour it on and have it coat this embed nice and evenly. The soap in my small container is picking up little bits of the soap that I've previously poured on, which means that I'm going to have little bursts of the previous colour. Alright, this is the final layer I'm doing on the moon embed, so I did add about half a cup of the black just to darken up that last step, and I'm mixing it in with my spatula before I pour that onto the moon embed for the last time. Now it's time to work on the rest of the soap. I'm going to bring that to a nice thin trace with my stick blender and then add my essential oils into the soap. I need this to be a thick enough trace that it's going to support the embeds that I previously put into that we've previously made. So the essential oils I'm adding into this blend are rosemary and lemongrass essential oil. It's a really nice fresh herby blend. And then I'm going to use my stick blender to bring that to a medium to thick trace, which will support the embeds. You can see I have my two tall and skinny molds that I'm using today, and I'm going to fill each of those about halfway with my black soap base. And then I'm going to leave those for about 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that my soap base thickens up enough that it will support the embeds. You can see with this embed where it was touching the little picture, it has pulled away some of that soap we layered on top. I was able to scoop that up and place it right back on top. When I cut this soap, you won't be able to see where that layer was at all. And I'm going to put the second moon into my soap mold, press that down so it is about halfway into the mold. I'm using any of the excess soap that was in the jug just to fill in around the tops where I had to hold those moons and to fill in those contact points where the embeds laid against the picture. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to put the rest of my black soap into the mold and tap those down to give me a nice even top. You can see this soap is already nice and thick. It had time to thicken it up while we were waiting to place the moon embeds in. So I'm going to go right ahead and use the back of my spoon to create the texture on the top of this soap. I really want this soap to be pretty plain. I want the moon embed to really stand out against this soap. So all I'm doing is a light texture on the top of this soap. It's going to be fairly flat, and I'm not going to put anything on the top of the soap at all. Alright, with that texture done, I left this soap to cure for a few days. It only needed about 24 hours, but it was a few days before I got back to cut this soap. I was super nervous about how this would come out. As I said, I've been thinking about this one for a few years, and I really hope that you can see the nice halo effect on the moon. So I've taken away the two end pieces, and let's take a look at the inside of this soap. I am so thrilled with this soap. There's a really gradual gradient to the halo around the moon, and it's a nice gradual effect. I love the way that the eclipse stands out against the background and really is the focus of this soap. I am so thrilled with the way this one came out. It smells amazing too. lemongrass and rosemary is one of my favourite essential oil blends, and it's actually the first essential oil blend I ever made in soap. So let's take a look at a few pictures of the final results of this soap. Just look at that moon sitting right in the middle with that nice bright halo around it and those juts sticking out. I love this soap so much. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next Tuesday.